Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Dewbs & Co. Coming up tonight, of course, a very fraught situation when it comes to Israel and Iran. We'll be crossing live to a White House press conference to see if we can find out what is Donald Trump going to do, and crucially, how will that impact us here in the UK. And the former Prime Minister John Major says that Keir Starmer needs to reset standards in public life and bring in proper sanctions before trust in the UK system is damaged beyond salvage. I've got to say, some people would say we've already reached that point. Would you? And get this, everyone, spending on sickness benefits is on course to rise by £18 billion if we don't have reform. That will be bigger than the entire police budget. So come on now, surely we need to get a grip of this. But what should that look like? And ministers have been urged to change the law to stop delivery riders using dangerous black market e-bikes. Good. Those things are an absolute menace to society. Let's discuss. All of that and lots more. And keeping me company tonight, my panel, I've got the man from Del Monte, also known as Kelvin Mackenzie, the former editor at The Sun, and alongside him, Matthew Talbot, the former Labour advisor. But before we get stuck in, let's cross live to your 6 o'clock news headlines.
Michelle, thank you, and a very good evening to you. The top story tonight at 6. The UK is warning against further escalation in the Middle East as tensions between Israel and Iran are spiralling. It comes as Donald Trump's weighing up the possibility of US military involvement, with reports he's approved plans to strike Iran, though no final decision has been made. Iran's supreme leader has warned that any American intervention would cause irreparable harm.
It's a terrible thing. I hate to see it. I hate to see all that death, so much death and destruction. I say it very simply, Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. I have ideas as to what to do, but I haven't made a final. I like to make the final decision 1 second before it's due. You know?
Overnight, Iran launched a fresh wave of missile attacks, with dozens of people reported injured across Israel. One missile hit near Soroka Hospital in the south of the country, prompting fury from Israel's defence minister, who says Iran's supreme leader can no longer be allowed to exist. In response, Israeli jets struck nuclear sites in Iran, including a heavy water reactor. There are no reports at this stage of any radiation leaks or injuries. So Keir Starmer, though, says there needs to be urgent de-escalation through negotiation efforts.
All of us, UK included, are very concerned about the nuclear programme that Iran is developing, long been concerned about that. Also completely recognise Israel's right to self-defence, but the principle is that we need to de-escalate this. There's a real risk of escalation here that will impact the region, possibly beyond the region, into Gaza, and obviously it's already having an impact on the economy. So I've been absolutely clear, we need to de-escalate this. Yes, the nuclear issue has to be dealt with, but it's better dealt with by way of negotiations than by way of conflict, and therefore our clear objective here is to de-escalate this situation.
In other news tonight, a former PhD student has been jailed for life for raping 10 women in London and China. 28-year-old Zhenhao Zhao was given a minimum term of 24 years after being found guilty of multiple rapes, voyeurism, drug offences and false imprisonment. The court heard he filmed most of the attacks, kept a box of the women's belongings, and only 3 of his 10 victims have so far been identified. One survivor said she was haunted by the attack. Since his conviction, 24 more people have come forward, and Zhao will not be eligible for release until at least 2048. The Bank of England has kept interest rates today on hold at 4.25% as the cost of living remains under pressure from rising food prices, global instability and the threat of higher oil costs. Officials say the global economic outlook remains highly unpredictable, with unemployment creeping up and inflation still stubborn in some sectors. The decision comes as the Chancellor's autumn budget is continuing to weigh on business confidence and the jobs market. Speaking this afternoon at the Times CEO Summit, the Rachel Reeves pledged that at least £9 billion a year will be given to tackle the soaring maintenance backlog across schools, hospitals and prisons. Lord Michael Gove has told us here at GB News that Whitehall officials tried to block journalists from exposing the Rotherham grooming gang scandal back in 2011. The former Conservative Cabinet Minister confirmed claims made by Dominic Cummings, saying he personally rejected advice from officials at the Department for Education who wanted to stop reports from being published. Well, here's what Lord Gove had to say to us exclusively here on GB News.
Rotherham Metropolitan Borough Council at the time didn't want the full details revealed. They approached the government and the Department for Education, where I was Secretary of State at the time, asked us to join them in a legal case in order to prevent the Times publishing. I looked at the material alongside Dominic and some other people in the department, and we contacted Rotherham Council and we said, yes, we will intervene in this case, but on behalf of the Times, because it's absolutely vital that the truth be told.
And if you thought 30.1 degrees was warm enough, well, I can tell you the UK has now recorded its hottest day of the year, 30.8 degrees in Surrey this afternoon, as a heatwave is beginning to take hold across the country. Amber heat health alerts are now in place across all of England, with warnings of pressure on the NHS and care services. Forecasters say temperatures could even hit 34 degrees this weekend, with official heatwave status already declared in some parts of Lincolnshire and Suffolk. The fire services are urging people to take extra care near open water and encouraging everyone to check in on the elderly and neighbours. That's the news at 6 o'clock. I'll be back with you for another roundup in around an hour's time. Now, though, it's over to Michelle.
Thank you very much for that, and hello, good evening to you at home. Of course, I'm Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs & Co. with you until 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, I've got my panel. I called him the man from Del Monte earlier. Look at how smart he looks. He's got his summer best on. Kelvin Mackenzie, the former editor at The Sun, and Matthew Talbot. You're equally as smart, but you're just not. You haven't got that summer vibe.
Stiff competition tonight, is Kelvin.
I know, you're getting into the summer spirit. Why do you look so...
I'm going out partying after this, so I'm going out to enjoy myself, so I decided I had to be elegant for my wife.
Well, I won't spoil any surprises for anyone, but I've got to say the top half looks better than the bottom half, because I do think he's a very stylish man, is our Kelvin, but it does kind of, the wheels come off a little bit when you start going beneath the desk.
Women have been saying that to me for years about
it's tea time. Shall we move on? Thank you. Everybody at home, you're very welcome to join the conversation tonight. We'll keep it above the table, shall we, everyone? Get in touch all the usual ways. Email me, gbviews@gbnews.com. Go to the website, gbnews.com/yoursay. Of course, you can tweet or you can X me. But look, very serious matters, of course, going on in the Middle East. Now, without further ado, let's cross. When I say cross, I mean lean slightly to my right, because you're literally with us in the studio today. What a treat for us. Catherine Forster, our political correspondent, bring us up to speed with what's been going on there.
Yes, well, the Prime Minister talking this afternoon of a, quote, huge risk of escalation in the Middle East, and the government is adamant that the need is to de-escalate and go back to diplomatic means. The Prime Minister in the last hour or so has said that he's talking to regional leaders on a daily basis and that they are very concerned about escalation and that it could easily spill into Gaza. Now, the Prime Minister's referred to the situation in Gaza as intolerable on various occasions over the last few weeks. Yesterday, he was talking to the Emir of Qatar. We know that the Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, is in Washington talking to Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State. That was a meeting that was scheduled for last Friday, but then was shelved because, of course, Israel began to attack Iran. Now, tomorrow in Geneva, there will be talks between European leaders and Iran. It's clear that Europe does not want this to go any further, wants to go back to talking. But it's not clear that that's what Donald Trump is going to do. He is keeping everybody guessing, and the British government having to plan for every possible scenario, including, of course, that Donald Trump will ask us for military support, which would be potentially very difficult for Starmer to refuse, given that he has bent over backwards to keep on in Donald Trump's good books. But also, we hear that the Lord Chancellor, Richard Hermer, has advised the government that if we were to directly support, get involved in attacking Iran itself rather than just defending Israel, that could put us potentially on the wrong side of international law. So the Prime Minister will be really hoping that they can have a diplomatic breakthrough before things deteriorate even further.
And I've got to tell you, we just popped it up on the screen. If you're watching telly, I'll describe if you're listening on the radio. So, of course, we're going to have a live press conference, presser, as it's known to us here in the industry. Press conference is what it means to you guys at home. And we shall see then, shall we? Because we'll have Caroline Levitt there. She will be addressing the nation, the press, see whether or not she can give any more guidance as to the direction of travel of Donald Trump. I've got to say, former Defence Secretary Jeff Hoon, you'll be familiar with him, of course, he's been on this programme many times. He said this afternoon that if America were indeed to attack, he says that this would draw more players into the arena, as it were, than even the invasion of Iraq in 2003. What an absolute mess. We'll have the conversation among ourselves before we cross live to the White House. Calvin McKenzie, your thoughts on some of this?
Well, I disagree with Starmer. Not that his views count for a row of beans, to be honest, in this. This is a play between Israel and the United States, and basically Israel. And I wish to God that the idea that Lammy is wandering around Washington giving views which have no quality whatsoever. The only thing that matters is that Iran is run by effectively a collection of bin Ladens, and they are right on the doorstep of a country that they intend and is part of their policy to wipe out, Israel. So Israel has decided we are going to attack them first. I can see nothing wrong with that. It's the equivalent, I don't know, of Wales and Northern Ireland going to war with each other. It has nothing to do with the rest of the world. And actually, I am massively in favour of the Americans going in and actually ending once and for all the nuclear threat that has literally been hanging over Israel now for the thick end of 30 years.
Come off it. You can't just say it's this kind of isolated regional Wales v Northern Ireland type thing.
Yeah, I can.
You can say what you want, but it is nonsense, though.
No, it's not. It's not. We don't understand what the Middle East looks like. One small democratic nation surrounded by a load of despots, all of whom would give succor and money to the bin Ladens of this world. You look at Gaza, they have got 15,000 Gazan troops there. There are 15,000 bin Ladens. How would you like that? Honestly, I don't want to see all this violence. Israel has to stand up for itself once and for all, or face the prospect of being wiped out. I'm sick and tired of us wandering the world saying, oh, woe is me, and all the rest of it. Let us support the one democracy in the Middle East.
Matt, your thoughts?
I think supporting democracy in the Middle East would be a good start, but 70 years ago we removed a democratically elected leader in Iran, which you can probably trace back to the current day where we find ourselves now. I said on Friday when I was on your show this had the whiff of more of a regime change than an attack on sort of the idea of nuclear weapons being built, and it appears that's now bearing fruit. I don't think there was a need to have this war right now. Building nuclear weapons, I mean, Netanyahu has said for decades now that they are weeks or months away from having a nuclear weapon. His credibility is shot on this sort of thing. I think they have spied an opportunity opportunity for regime change. All the attacks are targeted, and I think Trump has crumbled a little bit at this. I think Biden did the same with Netanyahu over Gaza and totally let Israel do what they want. Trump was supposed to go and speak to Iran and use diplomacy for
Well, he
some
did.
sort
He gave
of
him
deal.
60 days or whatever the time frame was.
He did, but the idea was they were going to meet in the next couple of weeks. Netanyahu's just totally kiboshed that, and at the moment, Israel appears to be leading US military foreign policy, which is a very dangerous position to be in, regardless of what Kelvin's thoughts are. And we should not be getting involved. We should learn from this sort of stuff that it never ends well. What is the day after plan for once we remove the Ayatollah and he's decapitated? Because there is no Western-backed, somebody that believes in democracy, politician there in Iran to just put in tomorrow. This is not reality.
What do you think's good when he was saying good to that? What, to America leading the way?
I like the idea of Israel getting on with it. They are very clever people. They've humiliated every one of their enemies. Let's be honest about it. The idea that 1 minute you're the commander of the Iranian army, bang, you're gone. 4 days later, come forward, you can be the Iranian leader. Bang, you're gone. And now I think it's fantastic. I think it's time that people stood up to these terrible despots. They have been trying to blow Israel out of the water now, literally for decades. The Houthis, Hezbollah, it doesn't matter. They are all funded by the Iranians. Finally, Israel is fighting back. And America looks at this and says, well, what is in our long-term interest on this? And honestly, yeah, Iraq was difficult. I totally agree. And we can all thank Tony Blair and Alistair Campbell for that. But this is entirely different. We are alone fighting against one of the great despots that the world has ever seen. I am personally delighted, and I wish them every success in whatever they plan.
Let me bring this back to you, Catherine, because ultimately, if America do get involved and then they come to Keir Starmer and ask for support in whatever form that looks like, this is going to be very challenging for Keir Starmer because he's spent quite a lot of time trying to make out that him and Donald Trump, the UK and America, we're best friends. We've got this special relationship. We've got this trade deal, front of the queue and all the rest of it. It'll be very difficult then for him to try and say, actually, no, I'm going to go against you and I'm going to do I'm going to row a different path on this.
Incredibly difficult because he never criticises Trump, although it's clear that he's taking a different approach. And there's a lot of things that we still want to get from the US. For example, the trade deal or tariff mitigation arrangement that they have that we thought was nailed down a month ago, that was announced again the other day. We're still paying 25% tariffs on steel. We still, with Russia and Ukraine, have nothing in the way of any sort of security guarantee in the event of a ceasefire. These are things that we've been trying to get for a long time. And Keir Starmer's policy of being super, super nice to Donald Trump at all costs, they would say has absolutely paid off. But if he goes along with this, first of all, it would be unpopular with a lot of people in his own party. I think questionable, too, what many people in the country will think of it. But also, we just don't know where it ends. We don't know what chain of events will be set in motion.
Goodness me, what an absolute mess. What do you think to it all at home? Join the conversation in all the usual ways. I shall bring you in after the break, and worry not, it looks like that press conference is delayed, but the second it happens, you will be taken straight to it. Coming up after the break, former Prime Minister John Major has warned that trust in politics is at an all-time low and that Keir Starmer needs to act now before it's too late. What do you think to that?
This is our country, and we think it's amazing. From high tea to the high street, we love it all. Even the rain, we like that too. There's nowhere else we'd rather be. That's why we're here to be the fearless champion of Britain, its voices and its values. Because we are GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Vegetarians now have a greater desire to wield power more than their meat-eating counterparts. I mean, you like a sausage, don't you, Biggins?
I like a sausage, but I have gone off meat per se, funnily enough, as I'm getting older. I think there are, you know, it takes a lot of eating a piece of meat, if you pardon the expression.
And the older you get, the more you find that it takes a lot of eating.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I must admit, I have more of a conscience about eating meat as I get older.
Yeah.
And that's a fondness of animals brings that. And if you ever go on Instagram and you look at cows and horses and pigs,
they're wonderful.
They're all affectionate and incredible.
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
And there we are, putting it into our mouths and eating it.
What do you think about the move to enforce vegetarianism on people, though? Because especially in schools and some universities, there's this trend for Meat-Free Monday, where there's this enforced absence of meat on children.
I think it's ridiculous. Let kids do what they want, to be honest with. Within reason, obviously, a healthy diet, da-da-da-da-da. But no, I think, like, you know, I don't eat meat, the husband eats meat. It's not an issue. Eat what you want. But I think that the fact that they're trying to force this into schools, look, let kids experiment, give them a vegetarian option.
Yes,
let them
and all
see
schools do that.
Just options.
It has just become political, and also there's a lot of misinformation out there. So I know children are often told that eating meat is terrible for the environment, but importing avocados thousands of miles is also terrible for the environment.
But also, I mean, a lot of vegetarian meals, are certainly processed vegetarian meals, have got a load of salt and fat and sugar in them, so they're actually worse for you than eating a lean piece of meat.
I think the tide is turning now, because the new trend amongst young people, particularly young men, is protein. Chicken, breasts, tuna. That's the new trend, to get as much protein in them as possible. It's very difficult to do when you're vegetarian.
GB News, the People's Channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Dewbs, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Kelvin McKenzie and Matthew Torbett. One of my viewers, Mick, he got in touch and said, Michelle, we've got a great panel tonight. We've got GB News' favourite left-winger. And then we've got the guy off the 1970s TV show, Fantasy Island, on the other side. But I had to confess, Mick, I'm a bit too young and I don't actually know what that programme is, so I can't work out if that's a compliment or a criticism, Kelvin.
I don't think it's a compliment, no.
You don't?
I think there was a little chap on there who used to shout out, "Hey, boss, it's deplane." That's all I can remember, but I'm a bit young for it myself.
Yeah, you look it as well. Look, let's talk about trust in politics then, shall we? Because according to former Prime Minister Sir John Major, he reckons basically it's hitting an all-time low and that Keir Starmer must act and crack down on misconduct. Let's take a listen to some of the things that he had to say.
Trust in politics is at a low ebb, eroded by foolish behaviour and leaving a sense of unease about the way in which our politics is conducted. Too often, ministers have been evasive and the truth has seemed to be optional. When ministers respond to legitimate questions from the public, from inquisitors, from the media, with pre-prepared soundbites or half-truths or misdirection or wild exaggeration, then respect for government and politics dies just a little more.
I do find it a little bit difficult to listen to people lecturing about sensible behaviour when they had an affair with one of their colleagues for many years. But anyway, let's move on from that. So let's bring it back to the core point about, you know, trust in politics and politicians and our standards. An all-time low, Kelvin?
I don't really think I agree with that, actually. I think that we have, in my knowledge, pretty honest politics. The thing that gets everybody going on the Conservative side, it's always being caught with your trousers down, and on the Labour side, it's always caught with your hand in somebody else's pocket. That seems to be the main issue. I have one example of it right now, though, which I think is quite dangerous. And I was approached by somebody about this to find out whether it was kosher or not.
Right.
There's a company that actually sells the ability for you to get a peerage. It doesn't quite work out like that, but this guy, who is a main board director of a big company, comes to me and asks, is this kosher? And the way it works is this: he gets a cold call, and it says, we think you'd make a good peer, right? And we'll do all the work for you. We fill in the forms. There's loads of forms to fill in. And we'll put that forward, and that kind of circumvents it. Doesn't mean that you automatically get in, but the fact that there's an
That can't be true, else they surely would have called me by now. Surely.
I don't think they've got your number, but I'll send it to them. That's right. Dame, eh? Dame Dewberry.
Why not?
Dame Dewberry, fantastic. So I was astonished about that. They charge like 10,000 quid to do it, okay? The idea that you could kind of do the paperwork for a peerage, I found very wrong. By and large, I don't agree with Major, but Major himself, as you pointed out, had an affair with another member of the cabinet.
And he used to talk like this all the time. Hello, John Major here. Can I help you?
And I like the idea of what he's talking about, but I don't think the substance is there. I don't think there is a lot of criminality in the Houses of Parliament. I think that, they may not be saying what they believe, but that's the art of politics, and they may not be very good. Why would you go into politics these days when everything that you do in your life is going to be turned over all the time? But the idea that they're all kind of at it, I don't accept.
Matt?
I think it varies. Little bit younger than Kelvin. Was in Parliament until more recently. There's a different side to things. There's a lot of bullying that goes on in Parliament that doesn't really get picked up on because Parliament doesn't have an HR system. It's a totally bizarre place to work at times, and they've sort of got a little bit better with that. But I think MPs, in many cases, realise they're sort of untouchable. Really, there's no way of really sacking an MP unless they've been guilty of criminal activity, and obviously there's the potential to recall them. I think the stuff Major spoke about with regards to a potential cap on donors and how much an individual donor can give is probably useful, and most people would think would be good. You can't have one person potentially controlling elements of democracy.
Oh, come on, man. How can you say that as a Labour guy? What about the trade union movement?
Oh, don't worry. Several different trade unions, Kelvin. Don't worry about that. It's not just one. But the other one, because I think the public would build on this, is advising the House of Lords Advisory Commission to scrutinise the suitability of political peerages as well as their propriety. I think peerages, as well as the honour system more widely, is just seen by the public as somewhere where politicians put their mates, whether they're really contributing anything to the House of Lords, scrutinising policy, or is it just a case of someone was their mate and they've got a job for life? I actually think that company, it shocks me in one way and doesn't another, because I think at times people don't care anymore. There's very little shame in politics and society. I think 10 grand is underselling it. I think if you're getting a job for life, and the influence that Lord or Baron or Baroness title will give you, 10 grand's a small price if you've got a fair chunk of change.
OK.
But it's bad, though. It's very bad.
I was shocked about that, to be honest.
Yeah, no,
I had no idea. But apparently they do all the paperwork for you, and there it goes forward, and before you know where you are, Dame Dewberry is doing the 6 o'clock show.
Hey, there could be worse things. Could be worse things.
No, totally. The only other thing is, even if you passed all this stuff that Major's suggesting, there's a sort of bulletproof bullets that he's given, I don't think people would be convinced, because I think it's already bedded in.
Yeah.
The politicians are corrupt, they're liars, they're cheats, and all that.
I've lived in the US, right, and over there, honestly, there is nobody lower than a politician. And what they get caught at all the time is for
stocks and shares.
Is for money.
Yeah.
Right, money. Either taking money which has been given to be used on advertising, and they're putting their hand in the till. I don't think we've come within 1,000 miles of that. And look at what's happened just in France now. The guy who was the president, right, is now being convicted of X, Y, and Z of corruption, receiving money, actually bags from from Gaddafi, and that kind of stuff. I mean, we don't come within 1,000 miles of that.
No, I don't think
so I'm pretty pleased. I wonder if there are things going on in our councils, our town councils now, which have no scrutiny at all, because there are no local paper journalists anymore. So therefore, so things like, anyway, I'm by and large, pro the
As
politician.
fascinating as you are, let's just cross live to the White House, shall we? Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt.
And this particular statistic is absolutely astounding. In the month of May, under the Trump administration, 0 illegal aliens were released into our country by Border Patrol. Let me say that again. Not a single illegal alien was released into the interior of the United States of America last month under this administration. Let's contrast that to Joe Biden's failed leadership, where immigration officers were wasting their finite time and resources processing dangerous illegal aliens for release into the United States. President Trump immediately terminated that reckless Biden-era practice that undermined the rule of law, jeopardized public safety and our national security, and diverted critical resources away from stopping deadly drugs and violent criminals from entering our country. That's the reason why not a single illegal alien was released into the interior of the United States in the month of May. And as a result, we now have a border that is reaching unprecedented levels of operational success. The efforts by President Trump to stop the illegal immigrant invasion and secure the border in this short amount of time represent one of the greatest achievements by a presidential administration in the history of our great country. With illegal entries being overwhelmingly halted, the Trump administration is dramatically ramping up efforts to arrest and deport all of the millions of criminal illegal aliens that Joe Biden let into our country over the past 4 years. President Trump has directed all of our ICE officers to do everything in their power to carry out the single largest mass deportation operation in history. Illegal criminals who are hiding in America's largest so-called sanctuary cities will be increasingly targeted for removal. Radical Democrats will no longer be allowed to shelter illegals who threaten public safety as part of their cynical efforts to expand political power, drain the American taxpayer, and artificially lower wages and steal American jobs. ICE officers are courageous heroes, upholding the rule of law and keeping our citizens safe. And they have the full and unwavering support of this president. In economic news, President Trump's pro-growth agenda is delivering for the American worker. Through the first 5 months of the Trump administration, real blue-collar wages are up nearly 2%. It's the strongest growth in nearly 60 years and a stark contrast from the negative wage growth seen during the first 5 months of the Biden administration. America is quickly returning to the successful formula of the first Trump administration: low inflation and rising wages. Once the big, beautiful bill is passed, this positive trend will only accelerate. Senate Republicans are continuing to push this critical legislation forward. The One Big Beautiful Bill will drive growth and supercharge the American economy. The Council of Economic Advisors found that the One Big Beautiful Bill will raise take-home pay by nearly $14,000 for a year for the average family of 4. The CEA also found that the One Big Beautiful Bill will increase wages as much as $11,000 for the average worker in America. The One Big Beautiful Bill expands the child tax credit and makes it permanent for more than 40 million families with children. And the bill will deliver no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and substantial tax cuts for our incredible seniors. Simply put, the One Big Beautiful Bill is a massive win for middle-class Americans. When nearly 80 million Americans sent President Trump back to this White House, they were doing so expecting these popular policies to be enacted. Republicans in Congress have a mandate to deliver, and President Trump demands they send this historic bill to his desk for signature by Independence Day, July 4th. The American people are fully behind President Trump. According to brand new polling from Insider Advantage, a clear 54% majority of Americans approve of the job President Trump is doing. That's because this president is keeping his promises and taking action every day to improve their lives. And passing this bill will help fulfill a number of President Trump's core campaign promises. Now, regarding the ongoing situation in Iran, I know there has been a lot of speculation amongst all of you in the media regarding the president's decision-making and whether or not the United States will be directly involved. In light of that news, I have a message directly from the president, and I quote, "Based on the fact that there's a substantial chance of negotiations that may or may not take place with Iran in the near future, I will make my decision whether or not to go within the next 2 weeks." That's a quote directly from the president for all of you today. So we'll kick it off for questions here in our new media seat. We have Eli Lake from the Free Press. Eli, go ahead. And
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you.
The Free Press. The decision to extend the, I guess, delay in enforcing the TikTok ban.
Sure.
Can you talk about how the White House understands its constitutional authority in light of the Supreme Court's decision in January that said that the president had to enforce the ban?
Sure. Well, as all of you know, because the president put it out on his Truth Social today, he did sign an executive order to extend the TikTok ban for 90 days. So in the effort to make a deal. And the White House counsel and the Department of Justice have reviewed this executive order, and I can get it for you. I think it's on our website by now. If it's not, my team will now put it up immediately. And you can read the language in that executive order. And the White House counsel's office and the Department of Justice strongly believe in the legal rationale for this executive order. They wouldn't have the president's pen hit it if they didn't. And the political reasoning for this, of course, is because the president made a promise to keep TikTok on. There are 100 million Americans who use this app. It's widely popular. He also wants to protect Americans' data and privacy concerns on this app, and he believes we can do both things at the same time. So he's making an extension so we can get this deal done.
Can I get a follow-up?
Sure.
A few weeks ago, Tucker Carlson reported on a meeting between the president, Mark Levin, and others at the White House. Is there a leak investigation, and can you say who else was in that meeting?
I'm not aware of a leak investigation at this time. I, for one, do not reveal details about the president's private meetings without his permission to do so. But certainly the president does not like when people leak. He takes that very seriously. This entire administration takes that seriously, and that's why you've seen at agencies some of the cabinet secretaries have been given the authority by the president to let go of staff who are engaged in such leaks, especially those that risk American national security. Sure. Go ahead.
Caroline, thank you. So, Rhino warmonger Lindsey Graham, he recently called on the U.S. to go all in.
That's quite the lead to a question.
Right. What's your message to everyday Trump supporters? Not the Tucker Carlsons or other big names, but everyday Trump supporters, grassroots who voted for President Trump to stop the wars, rejected this in the primary, going into another war with voting against Nikki Haley. And they want to see non-U.S. involvement in this war. What's your message?
Trust in President Trump. President Trump has incredible instincts, and President Trump kept America and the world safe in his first term as president in implementing a peace through strength foreign policy agenda. And with respect to Iran, nobody should be surprised by the president's position that Iran absolutely cannot obtain a nuclear weapon. He's been unequivocally clear about this for decades, not just as president, not just as a presidential candidate, but also as a private citizen. In fact, I have some quotes for you. In 2011, President Trump said America's primary goal with Iran must be to destroy its nuclear ambitions. We cannot allow this radical regime to acquire a nuclear weapon that they will either use or hand off to terrorists. In 2015, the president said the problem is that Iran poses an existential threat to Israel, our Middle Eastern allies, and the United States. And of course, the president has repeated that in his first term as president and his second term as president as well. That's why he was adamantly opposed to the disastrous Iranian nuclear agreement that was implemented by President Obama. And it's why he has given great latitude and given a lot of effort to achieving a diplomatic solution. But he's been very clear. Iran went for 60 days when he gave them that 60-day warning without coming to the table. On day 61, Israel took action against Iran. And as I just told you from the president directly, he will make a decision within 2 weeks.
A follow-up?
Sure. Go ahead, Natalie.
Thanks, Caroline. Can you confirm whether Steve Witkoff has been in touch with the Iranian foreign minister? And does Witkoff plan to go to Geneva tomorrow for talks?
I am not tracking that on Mr. Witkoff's travel schedule, but I can certainly check in with him to be sure. As for correspondence between the United States and the Iranians, I can confirm that correspondence has continued. As you know, we were engaged with 6 rounds of negotiations with them in both indirect and direct ways.
Thanks, Kelly. Just to clarify the president's statement just now, when he says that he'll make a decision in the next 2 weeks, is he saying that if Iran does not come back to the negotiating table within the next 2 weeks, that the president will strike?
The president is saying that he will make a decision whether or not to go within the next 2 weeks. It's very clear and direct.
And is he seeing any signs of progress? He obviously is holding out hope for negotiations, but is he seeing any inklings of progress that give him that hope that talks are still possible?
Well, that's why he said in the statement that I just read for all of you, based on the fact that there's a substantial chance of negotiations that may or may not take place with Iran in the near future, he will make that decision within the next 2 weeks.
What makes him think there's still a substantial chance, is my question.
I'm not going to get into the reasoning and the rationale. The president believes that, but that's his position, and he will make a decision within the next 2 weeks.
Caroline.
Sure.
Thanks, Caroline. President Trump has said previously in regard to Russia, he's used this phrase about 2 weeks several times in terms of, like, we expect like a 2-week deadline and then you give another 2-week deadline. How can we be sure that he's going to stick to this one on making a decision on Iran?
Well, there you go. Clear as mud, apparently, what Donald Trump means. I mean, we had a 60-day deadline, didn't we? And as we've just been hearing there in the questioning, that was, of course, extended. And now, based on the fact that negotiations may or may not take place, we've got another 2-week window then before Donald Trump decides what he wants to do. I thought that question, the one just before last there, was a really key point where the press secretary, Caroline Levitt, was specifically asked, so many people, just normal, everyday Americans, one of the reasons they voted Donald Trump is because he was promising all the time, no more wars, we will stop the wars. So how does this fit into that? But then, as she says, he's also been very consistent about his position about Iran having nuclear weapons. Are you any clearer, Kelvin McKenzie?
No, I mean, this is a big decision, right? I'm glad we have a president who's not simply firing from the hip. One of the curious aspects of Trump is that he is not pro-war, right? Which is a good job that I'm not in the White House. But he has stopped much of the arms going into Ukraine, much to the pain of the people of Ukraine. I'm very surprised about that. And I'm also very surprised that he hasn't given the go-ahead straight away to Israel to say to them, we are going to send in those bunker bombs and we're going to blast that mountain, which is apparently 60 metres deep inside rock, and we're going to blast it off the face of the earth, which is what I would be in favour of. But he turns out to be a cleverer and more peace-minded man than me.
I've got to tell you, by the way, just in response to some of the comments you were making earlier on at the start of the programme, Kelvin, I've had loads of people write in expressing their kind of agreement with what you're saying. Matt, your thoughts?
Yeah, he's got a lot to think about. I think the 2 weeks is obviously a negotiating ploy. It's quite high stakes, but basically putting on record, you've got 2 weeks to sort of potentially get round the table, or who knows what I might do. Domestically, there is a split in the sort of MAGA coalition, as suggested by the journalist there. Tucker Carlson is dead against this. Steve Bannon has said he's worried about where Trump is on this. His own Director of National Intelligence said only last month there is no evidence whatsoever that Iran is building a nuclear bomb. Trump since said he doesn't care what she said, which I think, tells you what he thinks of her, and apparently their relationship has gone very frosty. I think this comes back to the fact that this is a war of choice. There is no need for him to be getting involved. This is Israel's choice because they've reckoned that their proxies of Iran are weak. And at least, we've seen some likenesses to Iraq recently in the 2003. We were all led along a little bit by a dodgy dossier, obviously, in 2003. We don't even...
Alistair Campbell's dodgy dossier, Labour.
I don't disagree.
Oh,
Listen,
right.
I was about 8 years old, so I didn't really know. But I'm pretty sure I might have been against it, Kelvin. But at least then there was an idea that somebody had nuclear weapons, we might have to act. We don't even have that now. We have Netanyahu's word leading Trump along like a little poodle.
We do have that nuclear authority who have gone round and now been denied the right to inspect the nuclear area. Look, and if you're going to do that and you're Iran, right, you know that there's going to be repercussions, and repercussions there are right now. I'm astonished that Israel, in the light of their hospital being bombed today, haven't actually really thrown their toys out of the pram and actually attacked Tehran residents themselves. They've continued on the military side. I admire them for doing that, because if somebody fired a missile into King's College Hospital in Camberwell and we had a decent Prime Minister, then I'm sure there would be a hefty response. So I'm very surprised, and I admire Israel for not doing it.
Do you know what it takes to build a nuclear weapon? to sort of get at Netanyahu saying they've been months away.
Do you know
from the last
what?
decade.
Do you know what? I left school at 16, right? The chances of me knowing how to build a nuclear bomb was not considered on my CV when I became the editor of The Sun.
You've got this far without
by the
it,
way,
don't worry.
founded TalkSport.
We're pushed for time. I'll very quickly tell you, you need to acquire enough nuclear fuel, which requires its own breakout. You've got to enrich enough uranium at a high percentile to have nuclear fuel to put in a bomb. Then you need to know how to weaponise that bomb. And then you have to go through many months-long process to miniaturise the fuel, making a nuclear warhead and all the rest of it. No evidence whatsoever. We cannot live in a world where
But
we
they would
just
argue
decide...
that there has been evidence of overstrength enrichment and things like that. That's one of the catalysts to all of this.
Well, it's very embarrassing if the US's own Director of National Intelligence doesn't know that and actually suggests the opposite. You can't live in a world where we just decide to take out...
Can I thank you? When I leave here tonight, instead of going out to dinner, I am clearly...
Very useful for dinner tonight. I'm telling you, useful talk. But you can't go around just killing people you don't like. Without any evidence of anything.
Well, I think when it comes to the fact that the Iranians have actually said we want to wipe Israel off the face of the earth and have funded a whole series of groups surrounding Israel and are trying to do that left, right and centre, instead of that little old Israel, which is about a tenth of the size of its enemies in the area,
Well,
right, have
let's be honest
actually
about
put
what's
them to the
going on.
torch, and I'm very pleased.
This is not about nuclear weapons. Let's be honest. We're doing a regime change. We're wiping them out. Everyone wants to pretend what's going on. We know what's going on, and we're going to get dragged into it. And it's our troops that'll die. It's America's troops that'll die.
Do you
and it's our leaders that'll have to live with
Do you honestly believe that Starmer, who, by the way, probably has a job in the morning finding his own slippers, is going to send out a whole load of our troops out into the Middle East to start fighting? We do not fight those kinds of...
If Donald Trump asks him, my fear is yes, he will. That's the problem.
I do agree with that point, that, in fact, the truth about the matter is that Trump would have said to him, I can rely on you to give up, to give us air bases and the like, because if you don't do that, matey, we're not going to give you the tariffs. I totally agree with that.
Well,
and
yeah.
Starmer, when it comes
10%
to...
tariff on steel is more important than death in the Middle East and death of our own troops. I tell you what, it's
I'm
a
quite
sad old world.
I'm quite in favour of regime change as well. That guy is Bin Laden, an elderly version of Bin Laden.
It's always worked so well in the Middle East, of course. It's always worked so well for us.
Well, you'll have strong opinions on that. I can tell you at the moment, looking at your comments that are coming in, you've got a lot of support, Kelvin McKenzie.
Well, they're intelligent people.
With your
They're not
opinion.
socialists either.
Well, we have a broad mix of people that watch GBNews.
They're all
Thank you
God's
very
people.
much.
All God's
Yes,
friends.
look, coming up after the break, let's talk about our benefits bill. It is getting out of control. Is it time now for serious reform? I'll see you in 2.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Beth.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie's here.
I'm Michelle Dewberry. Britain's News Channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits. You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
And
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. No, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Dewbs, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello everyone, Michelle Dewberry, Kelvin Mackenzie and Matthew Talbot alongside me. I've got to tell you, the situation when it comes to John Major lecturing about trust and all the rest of ethics, etc. in politics. Many of you are getting in touch, raising the scenario about the EU, the EC there, saying actually he is no one actually to talk. Lots of you as well are talking about transparency. Asking questions about things like Nick Brown, that former whip, whatever happened to him. Many people asking questions about the situation there. And when there's a lack of transparency, that doesn't help build trust in politics. Do you know the answer to that? What happened to Nick Brown?
I have heard stories, and I don't know for certain. All I heard was it was very grim, and it's best I say no more because I don't know for certain.
But that's the problem, you see, and I won't go there. I can already feel twitches from people worried legally. But, you know, when you've got somebody that's in a prominent public position in politics and then they literally just disappear with barely a word spoken about it, that doesn't actually foster trust in our political system, does it? Anyway, keep your thoughts coming in. Let's talk benefits before we leave you. In fact, actually, look at the time, everyone. It's almost time for us to go. We might have to touch on this one very quickly. In fact, actually, do you know what I'm going to do instead? What? I was going to talk to you about the benefits bill, but this is such a big topic. We'll be sitting here all night, so let me move on to a different one because I've only got a few minutes. Deliveroo. Yeah. Uber Eats, all of these delivery food systems now, they're up and down the country. Many of their riders, ladies and gents, are using black market e-bikes. They're a menace, if you ask me. Is it time now for these companies to get a hold of this? Because the ministers, Kelvin Mackenzie, are suggesting a change in the law to make them do just that.
Yes, I don't know if you've ever driven around London, and honestly, they are taking their life in their hands. They're also taking your life in their hands. It's incredible. And what has turned out to be happening is that these bikes are being used 24 hours a day, 12 hours by the person that's supposed to be doing them, and then the other person on there is actually paying to take the position because they are claiming to be the person who is entitled to do this delivery. It's an absolute racket, and the companies know all about it and actually aren't going to do anything about it because they haven't got enough people to serve a disgusting aspect of life, which is that everybody and their relationship now sits at home and has it delivered to them rather than going out. And the sooner we start dealing with this, the better.
Matt, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think on the wider working practices, I agree with Kelvin. The companies know what's going on. People are buying people's profiles and people that maybe aren't here legally. And it's a safety risk, really, as well, for young women that are ordering stuff. On the e-bikes thing, you'd struggle to find somebody that disagrees, surely, other than potentially Deliveroo riders. If you're riding around on a 40 miles an hour e-bike, you should have to have a licence.
Often on the pavement, by the way.
Oh, I know, it's a nightmare. I've been took out a few times. And we have seen people, you know, not massive numbers, but people who have been killed by normal cycling bicycles. because they're going far too fast. You're going 40 miles an hour. That is enough to kill somebody, and you should be able. You should prove that you're trained to be able to ride that. If that's the case, you should have a licence. You should absolutely be on the road. So I don't see any sort of controversy.
I mean, one of the bizarre aspects of it is that the red light in London
doesn't exist.
It's just well, that's an idea. I don't think I'll bother with that. These guys are going through it at 100 miles an hour, especially, by the way, just on the cycles, let alone.
But do you know what? I wonder if, and I don't know this, but if you don't deliver it within a certain amount of time, I wonder if you don't get the money that you should, because there's such a pressure on even delivery drivers in vans, you know, the companies that deliver parcels and whatnot.
So you think it's the incentives that are the problem?
I was in a Chinese the other day.
Is this a quick story? Because
I was in a Chinese the other day
right,
where actually there were loads of tables empty. But the Deliveroos were coming in and in and in, and actually they couldn't cook enough, and so they were kicking out they were not taking anybody coming in.
Great story. Look, Deliveroo says following the highway code and using a legal roadworthy vehicle and clear conditions of a rider's service agreement with us, if a rider is found to be in breach of the law and their obligations, they say that they will stop working with that individual. Well, Deliveroo, there you go.
Untrue.
You got
Wholly untrue.
I was just about to say you got a round of applause and a bit of support from Kelvin there, but then he ruined it with his final words. But anyway, look, thank you to my panel tonight. Thank you to each and every single one of you for your company at home as well. I very, very much appreciate it. Do not go anywhere, though, because up next is Nigel Farage, but I will see you tomorrow night.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Evening. Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Been hot today, but tomorrow, for many of us, likely to be a little bit hotter. Plenty of hazy sunshine, a chance of 1 or 2 thunderstorms. High pressure is still in control at the moment, but low pressure is edging in, and that is just mixing things up a little bit, providing more cloud. 1 or 2 thunderstorms possible for Northern Ireland and south of Scotland this evening, and later tonight over South Wales and South West England. Again, you might get woken up by a rumble of thunder. For most, though, it's just a dry night, a very warm night, though. Temperatures really holding up. A sticky one, difficult one for sleeping. 17, 18 the low in most towns and cities, maybe no lower than 19 across parts of South Wales and South West England. So a warm start to a hot day. A bit more cloud around tomorrow. The sunshine likely to be a little bit hazier compared to today. And again, the chance of 1 or 2 isolated thunderstorms breaking out. Initially over Wales and South West England. Most other areas starting dry. Probably a warmer day tomorrow for Northern Ireland, much of Scotland. It's quite a few degrees higher, the temperatures here. Still quite a bit of cloud at times from an old weather front across parts of the Northern Isles and the Western Isles. Then, as I say, as we go through the day, a bit more cloud around, so the sunshine will be a little more hazy, but those temperatures will still tick up. And we could just see, again, 1 or 2 thunderstorms, very hit and miss. Most places won't see them, but parts of Western England, Wales. And come the afternoon, Northern Scotland could just catch a thunderstorm too, as temperatures here get close to 30 Celsius, and further south, widely over 30 degrees across the heart of the country. 31, 32 likely to be the top temperature. Could reach 33 or 34 on Saturday, but a greater chance on Saturday of seeing some vicious thunderstorms, particularly for Wales, later the Midlands and Northern England too. So that's something to watch for Saturday. The peak of the heat on Saturday, maybe 33, perhaps 34 across the east, but it is going to turn cooler from the west and temperatures lowering for all of us by Sunday.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. In Kirklees, expect delays on M62 eastbound between junctions 23 and 24 due to emergency barrier repairs, with 2 lanes shut. In Knowsley, M57 southbound exit slip at junction 1 is closed for emergency roadworks. In Leicestershire, M1 northbound between junctions 23 and 23A has 2 lanes shut. Worcestershire's M4 2 northbound entry slip from M5 south is closed. Hertfordshire's M25 anti-clockwise entry slip at junction 23 is blocked due to planned maintenance. Kent's M25 anti-clockwise exit slip at junction 1B has 1 lane closed. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.